But in fact, you'll get a good laugh out of this. There's one tree we walked past that was probably like the thickest tree that we saw in that entire redwood forest, and I'm like,
Dude, I love thick wood.
It's the best. It's just dense and hard. And
just old, thick wood.
Story of my life. But I walked up to him, I looked at Megan, I'm like, I need to hug that tree.
Fuck off. Did you really?
Oh, fuck it. I'll show you a photo.
Were you joking or were you serious?
No, like, I'm fucking dead serious, dude.
Why?
I don't know. There was, like, I just had to. Like,
you're actually hugging the tree. And welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast with Ben and Nic.
Yeah, I've had this fucking, like, I'm on the tail end of, like, that cough. Fucking Megan, though, she's on the tail end of that chest infection that she had. Like, she's got to run a marathon this weekend down the coast. And she's like, my heart rate will skyrocket walking from my bedroom to the front door. I'm like, oh, you're going to have a great time this weekend.
She had a couple of weeks where she wasn't able to do any training runs as well, huh?
Yeah. So she'd gotten up to a point where I think she was clocking like 65 or 70 Ks a week worth of running. So obviously like a lot.
Yeah.
And then she literally went, like, you could see on her like Strava, you can see like her scale go up, and then it just drops.
0. Yeah.
Yeah. So like it's been a bit of a challenge for her trying to get back into it. She's like, my lungs and my heart rate are just saying no. So again, like me being me, I'm like, I have solutions. Do you want to hear them, or do you just want me to listen to you? Because I'm like, I'll just listen if I have to. But like, if I can provide some solutions to hopefully ease things back in at a slightly faster pace, I'm like, we can look at some things.
Would you be open to that? She's like, no, I just want to listen.
No, she was actually pretty open. She's like, what suggestions do you have? I'm like, well, for one, like, as weird as it may sound, like breath work, like actually get yourself used to like long inhales, holds, exhales, get the lung capacity back up without the stress of actually running. And then I'm like, and then sauna work.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's enough research into the cardiovascular benefits that sauna provides. Like obviously it's not going to make a huge difference between now and the weekend, but she has a 100K run a little bit later this year.
Is that coming up fairly soon or not?
It's in October, I think.
Yeah, okay. I have one of my clients, one of his workmates is training for 100K. And it's coming up in a couple of months as well. And we were talking about Megan last night. We were just talking about Megan training for 100K coming up as well, because I remember you mentioning that. And
yeah,
we were wondering if it's potentially the same one, because, we both kind of said it doesn't seem like there would be that many 100K runs just going around.
So it's the last weekend of October.
Yeah, okay. It'd be interesting if it was the same one.
Be very interesting.
But
I'm really excited for her. I reckon she's going to absolutely smash that.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Nathan about it, and like I said, his workmate, that's kind of what he does as well. And we're just like, dude, that's kind of like a whole different level of insane.
Well, it's interesting. Like, obviously, I've been to one event with her. It's an interesting bunch of people. Like, the last one that we were at, which is at like a national park here in Vic, they literally had like the pizza truck, the coffee carts and all that sort of shit. And there's a guy who was at the event who does all like the medical and rescue stuff. So obviously if someone's out on the trail and they get injured or they need to pull out, he's the one that has to go up and like get them. They drive like their little units up to like the top of nearby mountains, so they have cell coverage up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I would just end up like hanging out, like eating pizza, waiting for these people to finish runs. I'm like, yeah, like I'm all like snugged up with like my big jackets and shit on, eating pizza, drinking coffee. You're off running like 40 Ks in the mud. We ain't the same.
Yeah, it's a different level of commitment and Toughness, I guess, too, to an extent. You know, all of the sports that I've ever done or athletic endeavors have been there's been moments of toughness and then moments of just being able to find little, I guess, shortcuts to make the game or the endeavor easier. If you think about rugby league, it's an 80-minute game. You know, some of the times I played 80 minutes, which was not super common for middles at the time, but most of the time it was done in 2 stints with a break on the sideline to regather. So you've got maybe 15, 20 minutes of work, a gap, another 15, 20 minutes of work to finish. And within that 15 to 20 minutes of work, you have high effort bouts and you have areas where you can take a bit of a breather, find shortcuts around the field to regain some composure. So it's not like 80 minutes of suck. It's like you can kind of do anything for a few minutes if you put your mind to it. You think about powerlifting. Powerlifting's a tough sport. It's a mentally challenging sport as well. But the hard part lasts seconds. You're under a heavy barbell for a matter of seconds at a time. And in my brain, I kind of frame things around you can do anything hard for a few seconds if you know that on the other side of it, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And this is going to suck for 5 seconds and then it's going to be okay. Well, I can just suck it up for 5 seconds. When you think about, it's the same thing with sprinting. I'm going and doing my track sessions at the moment, and it's really hard because I fucking suck at sprinting at the moment. But I sent Killian a message the other day. I was like, dude, 60 meters is a battle. I did my first 60s last week, and I was like, this is a battle. I get to 30, and I'm like, okay, things are hurting, but at least I know there's a few more seconds left, and that's it. You do a 100K run, that sucks for hours on end. And you just have to keep going.
Like, if you think about it as well, like she did 100 miles earlier this year.
So what's that in Ks?
162, I think it was, or 165. And she was running for like 31 hours or something crazy like that. Like
and that's not comfortable.
No.
That sucks at like hour 2, regardless of who you are.
Dude, that sucks at like minute 2.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah, but like she, like, because I was obviously like, I was messaging her while she was doing it, and she started like obviously like really early, and then there was an app at the goal that like every time she would pass a checkpoint, it would update being like, yeah, she's at this point. So I could obviously keep up to date a little bit with her. But like she ran from like 4 a.m. on the Saturday morning through till like 9:30, 10 o'clock on the Sunday morning, or something bonkers like that. And I'm like the level of like how impressed I am at someone's ability to do that, in particular like her ability to, because that's something I could never do.
No, even from a mental capacity, I'm not sure that I could do it. Because like I said, everything has been short bursts, and when I can frame it around, you can do anything for a minute, you can do anything for 20 seconds. I'm not sure that I could go into it and be like, you can do anything for 30 hours. That's a long time.
Even when I do like little bits of cardio at the gym where it's like, I'm just going to go sit on the bike for like 15, 20 minutes, tick the legs over, do some like low intensity, steady state cardio. I'm like, I get bored.
Yeah.
When I used to run track, like one of my coaches was like, we want to get you like better at hurdling with like alternate legs so that you can run 200 and 400 meter hurdles because you will be really good at it. I'm like, dude, I couldn't be fucked running 400 meters. To me, that's boring.
Because give me the short stuff.
I'm like, give me 100s at an absolute maximum, 200s if like I really have to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's have you asked her at what point it starts getting hard, or like at what point, what hour does it start to suck?
I haven't, but I will be curious to ask her that after this weekend. Like, at what point we like, fuck?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know the answer to that too, because obviously she does a lot of long distance training, but she's not running 160 kilometers probably at all prior to race day.
No,
So,
so her
hey, this really ties into my post that I did yesterday around like you don't have to do it in training to be able to do it in competition.
fuck, I love that post.
Oh yeah, you liked it?
Well, dude, how often do we talk about people like maxing out in the gym before a comp and then wondering why their comp goes to absolute shit?
Yeah, all the time. I meant to ask you off air what you thought of that, what you thought of that style of post, and I forgot. So we can just talk about it now. It's obviously the first kind of time that I've posted like that ever.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought, fuck it, was actually what I thought. That was my thought process. Was I like memes.
Yep.
Personally, I know some people vibe with the memes and some people don't. I'm big on memes. I'm a big meme guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, fuck it. I'm going to make some memes and just like I'll tie in some videos in there. I'll put some examples of me, displaying what I'm talking about in my memes, and we'll just like mash it all together and see what comes out of it.
All for it.
I thought it was pretty cool. I think there was something like 12 slides or something on there.
There was a few on there, but it was like they tied together really nicely.
Yeah, I thought so. I had to lead it off with a SpongeBob because
Obviously.
it's SpongeBob. He's
Yeah.
the GOAT.
Mm.
But yeah, I'd be interested to hear at what point does it suck? She's obviously training, doing a lot of long distance running, but what's her training look like? Is it blocks of like 3-4 hour runs here and there? Or
And again, like this is obviously just from like my observation so far, but she seems to look more for like weekly accumulation of kilometers rather than like, am I doing a run at 80% of the distance? Am I doing a run at this? Like, it's more so about the amount of kilometers that she can accumulate throughout the week.
yeah,
And then she's obviously balancing her gym stuff as well on top of that.
yeah, and to have those weekly kilometers accumulating at some point. You're not going to be able to add in more frequency, so you're going to have to add in like more duration to each run to keep that weekly number accruing at a rate that you're happy with, I guess.
Like realistically, like the weeks that she's obviously been around like that sort of like 60 to 70 Ks a week, if it's on obviously like an average of say like 4 runs a week, average of 15 Ks per run, like she does have some where it's a little bit longer. It might be like, 22 to 25 Ks for a run, and then some that might be like 12 to 15 Ks. But I mean, she like obviously like her being my partner aside, I find it fucking really impressive when people can do endurance based stuff like that, because it's obviously just it's a realm where I would be so far out of my depth, it would be hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. It's I look at it too from an athletic standpoint around the improvements that you could make with such minor details as well. If we think about the opposite end of the spectrum of say like 160-kilometer race would be a 60-meter race, for example. It's probably like the extreme opposite end of the spectrum. And in a 60-meter race, you only have so many ground contacts.
Yeah.
But your race time is so much shorter, so each ground contact is worth so much to your overall result, because if you fuck up one or two contacts, that's going to shave that's going to add X amount of milliseconds to your race, which can be make or break. Your hip positioning through that entire 60 meters needs to be perfect. Your heel recovery on all of those things, like they add a lot of weight because of the shortness of the distance of the race. On the flip side of the scale, I look at it in the sense that in a 160-kilometer race, which goes for, what'd you say, 30 odd hours of racing, it's like how many ground contacts are you having during that 30 hours? And if you can alter your mechanics or improve your mechanics on your stride or your ground contact to the point where even if it's a 1% improvement, that 1% multiplied over thousands of steps or strides over 30 hours, that can take seconds off your time, minutes off your time at that length.
So years and years and years ago, I was lucky enough that I got to work with a guy who used to run Ironmans. And we did like, I think it was like 20 weeks worth of prep together in the lead up to his run. And so obviously like you've got I think it's a 3.2K swim, a 42 kilometer run, and then 180K bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
That's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
Now, obviously, I'm like, I didn't need to program him any conditioning because I'm like, you're going to get it all through your training anyway. So all we did was like general strength and then strength endurance.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many minutes he shaved off his time?
Yeah.
17.
Incredible.
Like obviously, like over the scheme of like, it's a multiple hour event.
Yeah.
But literally the only thing that he did differently was did more like strength specific work.
Yeah.
So that like when he was running, his hips had the ability to hold position for a longer period of time. And then that obviously made his stride length more efficient. When he was on the bike, his legs had a bigger tank to be able to work with.
Yeah.
It was easy for him to then, work at a higher pace and maintain that for a longer period of time.
Yeah,
and that's where
absolutely.
I think, like when you do look at it at endurance athletes, the benefit of obviously including some strength work.
Yeah, well, 100%. Even from the perspective of creating propulsion within those strides, it's like, yeah, you can improve your technique or your ability to like strike in the right zone. Every stride that you take that kind of lands out in front of you is a moment of deceleration. Whereas if you could improve your technique so that you're landing in a position that's creating forward propulsion at a more steady rate, how much could you shave off your time over a 30-hour race? And then if you add in the ability to then create a greater amount of forward propulsion via like strength and strength endurance, like how much then can you shave off on top of that? And it's just this compounding effect, which is really interesting to me in those longer distance races, because these little minute changes that might seem and feel like nothing on a one or two stride like micro view, when you extrapolate that out over 30 hours of racing, it's like these are huge fucking differences that are going to be shown in your result.
Yeah.
That it's hard to it's hard to draw any parallels in that in many other things, because how many other sports go for 30 hours?
Almost fucking none.
Yeah. And when you're working with such a long timeline, these little differences, it's almost exactly the same as on the other end, is when you're working with such a short timeline, every minor difference makes so much of a change because of the shortness. But on the other ends of the spectrum, it's like the minor changes over here, they also equal so much because of the longness. Both extremes.
Yeah.
Very interesting, man.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting for me, I think, like obviously getting a little bit more insight into it in terms of how she goes about like prepping for it and then how that correlates to like her outcomes. But yeah, hopefully the old lung situation clears up pretty quickly for her so she can get back into the swing of things.
That's going to make it hard. This is not at all where we wanted this podcast to go, and we're 20 minutes in, but that's just so on brand.
Imagine us going on tangents.
Who would have thought?
Wild.
Not me. I wouldn't have thought.
Me either.
How's your training been, mate? Did you get a chance to try that little juicy little exercise that I sent you?
I didn't. I went into the gym on Tuesday and I was warming up and I'm like, oh no, I'm like, my knees feel like absolute dog shit today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm absolutely not going to do this. And that's all I have to say about it.
How come your knees felt like shit?
I think it's probably just like a combination of like the amount of sitting that we did over the weekend, like driving to and from locations. Obviously, like when we were doing some of the walks, like my hip was giving me a fuckload of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously like all day Tuesday, I pretty much spent all day in a chair doing check-ins. And then I was like, oh, I'll go to the gym now. And I took like a step into a lunge. I'm like, oh, no.
That doesn't feel good.
I don't like. So it ended up just being like a movement and almost like a rehab session, like just focusing on getting things moving again. Like I left the gym feeling fucking fantastic, but
Nice.
it was very much like it was very much just a move through like quality range of motion. Like load isn't the objective. It's just like get in there, move really well, and leave feeling good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that the first session you've done since the last time we spoke? I think you did. No. I think you've done a deadlift session, right?
I did, yeah.
Talk to me, brother.
So obviously, like, I don't really count this in the grand scheme of things, but technically I had my first 700-pound deadlift.
Hell yeah, you did.
Yeah, so I pulled 318. It's always handy when the trap bar weighs 33 kilos because it gives you that little bit of an extra boost.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously like the week prior, pulled 303, missed 323, and then this week chucked 318 on just to come in because like that 323 like was close. I'm like, it was just a bit too much. So I chucked just a smidge less on, and obviously managed to stand up with it, which is pretty cool.
How'd that feel?
Like, I mean, given the fact that it was no straps, it was beltless, like it felt pretty good, but it's been quite interesting seeing the improvement in my vertical with like absolute max force development through my lower body.
Yeah.
Again, without really doing a whole lot of actual jumping, my vertical has been increasing by like an inch to an inch and a half every 2 weeks.
Yeah. You're doing a little bit of jumping.
A little bit, but not a huge amount.
No.
And not consistently either.
You're fairly elastic as it is. I think you've got a little bit of a history in that.
Well, yeah, like my background, like when I was in high school, I had, I think it was like a 72 centimeter vertical. So like, I think that's like a 30-ish plus inch vertical. So
you can jump.
Yeah.
You're springy. And now with the strength behind you as well. I heard a really cool quote the other day saying power doesn't exist where strength doesn't exist first.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And I was like, oh, I'm like, and that brought it back to me. I'm like, you can't be powerful if like you don't have a really good base level of strength. My thing at the moment is just like trying to reteach myself things like landing and like take my ankles through the ranges that they need to be able to go through in order to be able to like have like triple extension and then triple flexion without like joints getting really pissed off.
Yeah. When are you going to start adding things like high pulls?
As in like the weightlifting and stuff like that?
Yeah, just like high pulls in general, even trap bar high pulls.
Potentially next week. I kind of want to use this as a bit of a transition week, just given that we're away this weekend as well. I think once we're sort of like back next week and like into the swing of things and have the next couple of months planned out with like weekends away and that sort of thing, it'll be a little bit easier for me to go, yep, I can like lock in specific training days, specific training times, and get like a really good run on things. But
because I'd be
like,
interested to see how that affects things as well.
Yeah,
because that's obviously then kind of leaning into that moving fast aspect as well.
Also, this is also pretty lucky where like one of the machines that we have at the gym, I can do like some jumping without like having to hold onto a trap bar because it like the shoulder pads like rest on my shoulders.
Yes.
So like that's been a really nice way to do like some really low like it's not necessarily about height. It's just like it's break the ground and then it's like absorbing, contracting, and like just timing the jumps. So that's been a really nice little piece of equipment to sort of slowly integrate me into that side of things again.
I'm going to have one of those at the new gym that I joined too.
Yeah. Nice.
Very similar. It's a Panada brand one, but it's like pretty much identical to the one that you've been using.
Yeah.
Which will be fun.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I'm quite interested. So my plan is to start track work again in like the next like 2 to 4 weeks.
Exciting.
Like, especially like I'm excited for it, like particularly because obviously my background is in track and field.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I'm probably just going to have to do is actually go out and buy like some actual like shoes to do some running in rather than like my Vivos. Certainly not going to be doing them in my Jordans.
I'd probably buy running shoes first.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to look at.
And then ease into spikes.
I'll be holding off on spikes for a while until my feet get back used to like building up that tolerance again. Like I don't really want to add in that level of rigidity throughout something like a spike.
That's red light signs.
Yeah.
Until you're ready. I learned that. I'm doing soft shoes for a while.
Yeah. But no, I'm looking forward to like getting back out into the track and like getting like that level of like springiness and speed back. It'll be good.
They're fast becoming my favorite sessions. It's cool. It'll be fun when we can compare times.
Yeah.
I'm looking at purchasing speed gates.
Fuck, you're a nerd.
I know.
I'll fucking love it.
I've got
speed gates and force plates.
No, so I have 2 things in my cart at the moment. And one of them, I had 3 things. One of them was the force decks, but I took them out because I have access to them through the footy club. So I'm not going to purchase them just yet because they're fairly expensive. I'm looking at the valved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I have access to the valved ones through the club anyway, so I'm not going to buy them. I'm just going to use theirs. But I do have the digital speed gates from Valve in my cart, which I don't know if you've seen them, but they're beautiful. They're just on like these little tripods, and you just set them up and they talk to each other wirelessly, and then they send your time straight to your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And they also integrate into the coaching app that I'm using at the moment as well. They literally seamlessly integrate into that and log all of your times for you straight away.
Nice.
And then they give you like comparison graphs and everything so I can track it all. And then I also have a digital dynamometer from the same company.
Shout out those guys.
So that I can they do sponsor some podcasts. They might sponsor us. We'll start posting it. Yeah, I want to measure my isometric contraction strength at various joint angles. Like, shout out Killian Hamilton, friend of the show, spoke to us about on his episode. It really got me like looking into the usefulness of that type of measurements and monitoring and data. And then I found this dynamometer through them, and I'm like, oh, dude, this is a pretty sick purchase. And I got the green light from them, so that's on the cards.
It's always the important part.
Yeah. And it comes with all of these attachments. Like it comes with an ankle strap attachment so that I can do hamstring curl, Nordic curl measurements. It comes with a handle so that I can do all sorts of stuff.
Fuck yeah.
It's pretty sick.
Nice.
And then, like I said, I have the access to the force plates through the physio at the club. So I'm going to do like counter movement jumps, stuff like that as well.
Nice.
And just be a nerd,
Why not?
I'm just leaning into it. It is what it is.
I'm all for it.
But yeah, keen to hear how you go on the track. Do you know how you're going to start?
Yeah, like I'm like if I have some resources that I may look at utilizing, but I think for the most part, what I'm going to do is just kind of go back to the old like preseason track days and just do like weeks worth of like prep work in terms of like really light cruisy run throughs, like high knee drills, like just get like the mechanics of like running down pad again and then gradually build up intensity. So essentially like the same way that I would get someone ready for like a big squat, it's like get basic mechanics prepped, very low intensity introductory stuff, and then gradually just like build things up over the weeks as tolerance allows, and then go from there.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm excited. Like, it'll be good. I may have a few ace cards up my sleeve that I can utilize if I have to, but I'm keeping it as a surprise. I'm keeping it as a surprise, motherfucker.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a few as well, so.
Okay, cool.
Like my force plates.
Cool. How's your training going?
My training has been fantastic.
Can I just say, in the last couple of weeks since you've made this transition with your training, this is the first time I've heard you like genuinely be excited about your training in a long time. It's really fucking good to hear.
Dude, I am so excited about it. I love it so fucking much. Which is cool. It's really refreshing. It's fun, and I'm really like I'm in it. I'm going deep on it, and I'm fairly hyper fixated on it at the moment. But that's just what I do, and that's how I get good at things. So
it's like, tell me you have ADHD without telling me you have ADHD.
Yeah, exactly. But it gives me something to focus on at least, and I love how I feel. I love that I kind of always feel ready to do anything at any given moment. Like I don't feel like I need this big build up to perform at my best. I kind of feel like I'm just always ready to perform at any given moment, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't felt like that in years. I spoke to you a little bit before we pressed record, and I spoke to Killian about this last night. I responded to one of his stories, and I said, dude, I never felt, and I've said it on this podcast, I never felt more frail and brittle than when I was at my quote-unquote strongest. I felt like if I needed to train, it took half an hour of like build up just to get to my first set because I was so broken and immobile and literally like frail is the perfect word. I felt like if I bent over the wrong way, it was going to be the end of it. Whereas now I feel like I can go in and I can do what I need to do at any moment. Which is such a nice feeling, like I used to have to be mentally prepared for a long time as well pre-session. So if something didn't line up training wise and my times got changed, it was the end of the world because I needed to do this and then I needed to do this and then I needed to do this before I went to the gym to train. Otherwise I wasn't ready. And whereas now, like I could get home and be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go train, and I just grab a handful of Red Frogs out of the cupboard and a Gatorade and jump in the car and go. And I'm ready at any moment, which is really nice as well. But yeah, training itself is good. I had a few little changes to my program last week. I have a few more little changes to my program this week. Just one or two changes rotating through those like general physical qualities and kind of training them on an undulating basis through the different like fast, strong, endurance, from those qualities of like strength, speed, and power, and rotating them through those things on a weekly basis. So just like little changes here and there to facilitate that, and it feels really nice. Things are moving in the right direction. My track days feel great. Like I said, I did the 60-meter rolling starts last week. First time I've sprinted 60 meters in a really long time. I felt like my 10s were much better to start with, way more explosive, and I was really putting a lot more force into the track, even on my bad, quote unquote, bad leg, which I feel like I've been babying a little bit up until now, just like kind of not limping, but not putting as much force into the ground with that leg. Whereas last week I felt like it was very much just, I was just jamming it into the ground with no concern.
Good.
Which resulted in things feeling a lot nicer. And then into the rolling 60s, and I was like, yeah, 60 meters is a battle. But it was only a battle because I was getting after it.
Yeah.
I wasn't just cruising through. I was actually I was getting after every single step, which felt nice. And then I actually did that twice last week. I did the same session twice, once on a track and once on a field. And the difference was unbelievable.
Yeah.
The difference in the surfaces completely changed the requirements on my end to make the runs effective.
Yeah.
Which I found very interesting. On the track, it was much more of a yielding, much more of a yielding of force, because the track gives back to you a lot more. So I'm hitting the ground, and then it gives back to me the same amount or more as what I'm putting into it. So in those moments, I'm yielding to that force and then creating the forward propulsion. Whereas on the soft surface of the grass, when I did it on the footy field, it's like that's such a soft surface that it gives me nothing back at all. So I then have to then produce all of the force every step. So it was a much different sensation.
Fun.
I enjoyed both immensely, though, and I enjoyed the contrast that played into my brain.
How do you feel the difference is on your knees, depending on the surface?
I didn't feel a whole lot of difference on my knees. I felt like I had to create a lot more forward propulsion off the field. So if anything, that was probably harsher. When you think it would probably, in my brain going into it, I thought it would be easier on my knee, but I think if anything, it was probably harder because I was having to create a lot more force myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but super interesting. And then my my gym training is going really nicely as well. So everything's going good, dude. I'm feeling really good. My A series today was a bit of a fucking gross one.
Tell me.
Single leg RDL, end range, hold there, dumbbell in each hand, drop and catch the dumbbell 12 times aggressively.
Gross.
And then straight from that into single leg drop jumps.
Gross.
So Yeah, step off 1 foot, land on 1 foot, short ground contact for height.
Gross.
Yeah, so that was pretty intense way to start the session, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's the first time I've done those single leg RDL ISOs with the drop catches.
Similar to like similarish, but also not quite the same. I did like paused end range, like landmine RDLs on Tuesday. And my God, like I got to the end of like the set and my leg was shaking like this.
Yeah, posterior chain just like lit up.
Yeah, and then like woke up the last 2 days. And I'm like, my glutes have been fucking fried.
Yeah, nothing like a good glute demolition.
I feel like that could go in another direction.
I was waiting to see if you went there, but I think we both thought it. We weren't exactly sure how to phrase it.
What are you talking about, Nick? This is a PG podcast. We don't swear. We don't have any innuendo. Like we're wholesome here.
Yeah, holistic.
It's good.
Saw some trees on the weekend.
Fuck yeah, man! Some big ass trees.
What's this trend of you putting a photo of a tree and then writing big ass trees with a handshake?
Oh, 'cause I just love big ass trees, man.
Why?
It's like me. Big trees is like. Yes.
Is that why we're friends? Because you kind of view me as like a tall tree?
Probably. Nah, like I get overwhelmed at the like just the sheer level of impressiveness. Like when you look at a tree and you're like, fuck, like that's, like, I mean, relative to the ones in California, like these ones aren't that old. They're like 90-ish years old. But in fact, you'll get a good laugh out of this. There's one tree we walked past that was probably like the thickest tree that we saw in that entire redwood forest. And I'm like,
dude, I love thick wood.
Oh, it's the best. It's just dense and hard. And
just old, thick wood.
Story of my life. But I walked up to it and I looked at Megan and I'm like, I need to hug that tree.
Fuck off. Did you really?
Oh, fuck it. I'll show you a photo.
Were you joking or were you serious?
No, like, I'm fucking dead serious, dude.
Why?
I don't know. There was, like, I just had to. Like,
you're actually hugging the tree.
But look how fucking big it is.
Yeah, that's cool, but...
I don't know.
What did she say when you said that? Was there like a moment of her being like, is this guy joking? Or?
No, she gets
she's like, do it. Go.
She's like, do it. I'll take a photo.
Do it.
Like, I get the best content with her.
Do it. I'll take a photo.
For me, like...
I love that there's no judgment.
Oh, none.
I'm going to say, if I was with you, there's a lot of judgment happening in that moment.
That's why I don't invite you to this.
I love you, but I would judge I'm judging the fuck out of you right now.
I was going to put it on my story and be like, hey, Nick, now you can call me a literal tree hugger.
I do call you that behind closed doors already, but now it's the truth.
I know. But no, like, there's just something I look at big trees like that, and it doesn't matter.
Were you drawn to that tree?
Yeah.
Like sexually?
Well, like, that wasn't the only, like, thick, hard wood in the forest, mate.
No, there was just something in you, and you were like, I just have to hug that tree. Did you feel better afterwards?
I did.
Really? Like you were like, okay, this feels really good.
I'm like
for my soul.
Yeah. Like, and I know you're going to fucking take the piss out of me at the moment, but literally, like, afterwards, I'm like, I feel calmer and I feel more settled. Like, I'm a little bit of a hippie, but like, there was just something about, I'm like, I just have to do this.
Dude, I support you in all of your endeavors.
But
I'm not going to say that you didn't feel that, because obviously you did. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. And you definitely, for whatever reason, felt like you needed to hug the tree, and for whatever reason, afterwards felt better for doing so. And there's obviously a lot of people in the world and throughout history, and I'm going to put you in this group that like doing things like that, and maybe err on the side of things of like things that are good for the soul, quote unquote. I guess where I'm coming from on it is there's a there's an aspect of light-hearted, like fun poking at you, just because I think it's fun to do that. And I'm going to do that regardless of the situation. Like, whatever you do, I'm going to make fun of you for it, whether I think it's a great idea or not. It's just going to be, that's how I communicate. But I also come from the standpoint of, and this is, I don't know if I've said this to you or not before, but I'm not even sure that the soul exists.
Ooh.
Like, what, I don't really know if that's a thing and if I believe in it. Like, to me, I'm just not that way inclined. If it's not explainable, if it's not tangible, I tend to just discard it as a thing. So yeah, I guess that's kind of hard for me to explain, but I guess that kind of plays into a little bit of those personality traits of myself that we've commented on in previous podcasts. Is I guess that kind of falls in line with that a little bit. But like, what is the soul? And I'm quite unsure if that even exists as a thing.
Have you heard of the 21 grams experiment?
I think we may have spoke about this before. I don't think anyone else in my life would have brought that up to me other than you, but I think I've heard it before.
So it's an experiment, it's a study that was published back in like the early 1900s. I think it was like 1907 by Duncan McDougall, something like that. He was a physician from Massachusetts. He hypothesized that souls have a physical weight and attempted to measure the mass lost by a human when the soul departed the body. Whether or not this has been like disproved or something, like I don't know, but they have literally essentially like measured someone just as they're about to die, and then the moment that they die, there's like a loss of like 21 grams.
Yeah, you have told me this before, and I went away and I thought about it, and I feel like there's probably some explainable reasons as to why. If you think about like muscle tone, even at a really surface level, is we hold tone within our muscles, and like, does that hold weight? Maybe. Like, I definitely feel, quote unquote, more weightless when I'm free flowing, less stressed, more in like a rhythm state than when I'm very rigid, high tone. I feel more weightless. So, like, when you die, clearly you lose all muscle tone. Is that could that add to a decrease in weight? I don't know. Like, maybe there is. I don't know. The soul is it's an interesting conversation nonetheless, and it's completely non-training related, but I don't think it always has to be. And it's like, is there? I don't know. I'm not sure that there is.
I don't look at the soul from like a religious lens where I'm like, oh well, you need to save your soul, otherwise you're, up for an eternal damnation in hell. I'm like, whatever. Like that to me, I'm like, whatever. But I would say that I err a lot more on the side of like spiritual in a way where I'm like, I don't think that when we die, that's it. I think there is something afterwards. What that is, I don't know. Like, there was a theory that I had, and whether this is just me being a little bit kooky or whatever it is, but my thing was always around like reincarnation. So like there are literally some people you meet and you're like, oh, you're a fucking old soul. This is not your first time doing this. And then you meet some people and you're like, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. This is like your first time around the block sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, obviously, I would say that you would probably be a little bit more on the logical side of things, in that if it can't be explained through science and facts and figures, that's probably a little bit of a degree of skeptical on your end.
Very much
Whereas,
so.
like, I 100%, I'm like, yep, like, show me facts and figures and that sort of stuff. But I'm like, if there are things that are occurring that can't explain, that doesn't mean that it's not correct or not real or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I'm always going to look for an explanation, though.
Oh, me too.
Because
like,
that to me makes things tangible. So,
okay,
so in my
another
brain,
little bit of a tangent.
Go.
How do you think they built the pyramids?
Well, I think aliens did it.
Okay.
Yeah. Like that to me is like the most logical explanation.
Mm.
If I go through the weight of the blocks and the equipment that they had available to them, the manpower that they had, and the amount of time that it would have taken to do that, and the effort to get those blocks in those positions, the precision in which they're placed, and the tunnels and everything that's inside them, and all of this stuff that I may or may not have spent time looking into. It's like that level of craftsmanship and labor combined. I just feel like, I just think it's probably not done by us, if I'm being completely honest with you. And then if it was, how have we regressed so far?
So, obviously, like, there's a lot of tangents that we could go on. But if logically you're like, oh, well, logically it was aliens, my question is, why is there no proof of aliens?
Well, because they don't. I think there is. They just haven't. Like, we don't have it.
Mm.
I think some people have it. Mate, you're going to make me sound like a crazy guy, but I think aliens live on the Earth right now.
Mm. There was
Among
actually
us.
like a really, yeah. I mean,
and so if that's the case, I think there are people on the Earth that probably do have proof and do know that this is occurring, but it's not just like general knowledge. And if you think about why that might be, do you think, in all honesty, that the general public would be okay with that information and the world wouldn't go into complete fucking chaos?
Dude, look at what happened with toilet paper in 2020.
The world's not ready for that information, mate. It's no. Well and truly the right call to not release that.
Yeah. Like, there was obviously, I consume some interesting content on the old social media platforms. And there was a reel that I was watching where this woman was talking about, like, why we seem to be so regressed relative to the technology that we would have had back when, like, the pyramids were built. Obviously, if not including, like, the fact of, potential of aliens. And the theory that she had was that back in those days, we worked in accordance with the land and we, like, utilized the laws of nature a lot more effectively. Whereas now it's a lot more, we know what we're doing, and we're kind of like going away from, like, the natural way of things. And they reckon that's partially why there's a bit of a discrepancy in terms of, like, the perceived technology.
Of course, you, of all people, are going to consume content that says the reason we are technologically less advanced is because of trees.
Of course.
Of course. of all reasons. Oh, Ben, you are true to your core a tree hugger.
Fucking oath. And proud of it.
And now everyone that watches this podcast now has photo evidence that this is in fact the case.
I'll post it on my story. Like, I don't care.
Can you post it on your story today?
Of course.
And tag me, and just be like, just spoke about this on Bars Loaded. #hugging trees.
Fucking oath. I'm going to do the whole big ass trees and shaking hands emoji as well.
Yeah, man, I've been to the Redwoods in California a number of times. Beautiful. I will say that. You will love every second of being there. It is really, really impressive, and I don't get impressed by trees. So, and I was like, this is cool.
So, like, I just get, I'm impressed by things of, like, marvel and wonder. So,
And that's why we're friends.
Yeah, because you are marvelous and wonderful.
Yeah, how I've managed to survive is what's marvelous.
Fucking know. But like, I remember back when I went to Spain, it's like back in 2011. I went to the big church in Barcelona, and I remember walking into it and just like looking up and being like I was just like, I was in absolute awe to the point where I literally just had to like find a corner, sit down, and I just like looked around me, observed things for like 3 hours before I could even get up and like walk around and like have a look at everything properly.
Really?
I like literally I was like overcome with absolute awe.
You're very much in your feels, aren't you?
Oh, fucking oath, man.
Like that,
and
that to
I
me.
don't
That to me.
apologize.
No, nor should you. But that to me really highlights, I guess, like
you know, I'm a very emotional person.
Yeah, but that really highlights it because like I've never felt like that about anything ever. Like I will look at something and be like, "Oh, that's cool," and then like 5 seconds later, not give it a second thought at all. And so, yeah, I've quite literally never been, overcome with, that type of feeling. Maybe it's the autism. I don't know. Am I broken? Is that?
I've just got a different flavor.
Do people feel like that about things?
I guess so.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. That's nice. That makes me feel like I'm a fucking robot or something. Like, what does the world look like through your eyes?
Right now, fucking grey skies.
How do you regulate that on a daily basis? Like, do you have just like really high highs and then really low lows and just like feel everything?
I mean, like, I have like high highs and low lows, but not to the point where I'm like, I can't control my emotions. Like, it's not like I see a video of a dog on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, I'm overcome with cuteness. Like, I'll see something and go, cool. But like, there have probably been, I genuinely think that's probably like the only time that like I've actually been like overcome with like awe and just like shock and disbelief of going, holy shit, this is really impressive. Like, there's a cathedral in Cologne in Germany that is like just this like monstrosity of a Gothic structure. And I'm like, I have to go there.
Yeah, that's cool.
But as far as like for example, like when we went into like the Redwoods on Saturday, I'm like, it's not that I'm overcome with emotion, but it's like I have a major sense of like calmness and relief that washes over me. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, I don't feel stressed. Like I feel very peaceful being here.
Yeah,
and
you can like physically feel a difference.
Yeah, like I would be, there's like, again, the logical part of my brain that's like, I would be really curious to like measure like what's actually going on physiologically, like, and what is it about that area? Like, is there something in like the quality of the air? Is it like, what is it that's causing me to like feel like I'm down regulating like a motherfucker? But that's all why I'm always like, oh, on another episode of I Could Live Here, it's like I could live there because I feel calm. I feel relaxed.
You couldn't live there because there's no houses there.
I would fucking build one, dude.
Every time you write on another episode of I Could Live Here, I literally show it to Em and I'm like, he can't live there. There's no houses there. What's he talking about?
So Megan and I always have these like things of like, yes, we watch videos of like people that will go out and like survive in the bush for like a month with no supplies.
Mm-hmm.
and they build the houses out of like the trees and shit they cut down. I'm like, I reckon we could do that.
You should do it. If you just don't turn up one week, I'll know that you've just gone to the bush for a month.
Yeah, it's like, guys, like for the next month, it's going to be bars loaded with Nic.
I'm just going to talk at the wall.
Ben will be back, maybe. He
That
could also just become a full swamp wizard and just...
That could be interesting. Imagine just an hour of me just talking to the wall in front of me.
Oh, dude, I feel like that would be fucking hilarious.
There'd probably be some moments in there for sure.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. I think there would be.
Yeah, definitely would be.
Have you ever tried to talk to just a wall and just see what happens?
No.
It's interesting.
Does the wall talk back?
Depends.
Oh, if only these walls could talk.
It depends. No, but it's a really good exercise in filling space and being able to put your thoughts into words without relying on someone else holding up their end of the conversation, and being able to just speak uninhibited. Something that I did a lot of in sales training.
So I do a lot of that in the car. When I'm driving like to and from the gym, I'll quite often be driving along and just have like no music on, nothing. It's just like dead quiet, and I will literally just have a conversation or just talk.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of me is like practicing, like trying to be a little bit more deliberate with the words that I use, the language that I choose, and how I sort of like preface things.
Yeah, I'll give you a nice little, I guess, drill or task to trial, and let me know what your thoughts are on it. It's something that I do fairly often, a couple of times a week, every week, and I have done for, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I think has very much helped my communication and my thought process. And I've had, obviously, we've been doing the podcast now for six months, and we've released a bunch of episodes. And I've obviously had conversations with people in real life about the episodes, and some of the feedback that I've gotten from that is, wow, you guys, you sound so natural when you talk. It sounds like the conversation just comes really easy to you, and it has done right from the start. And they were kind of just alluding to the fact that that's not always the case, and maybe communication isn't that easy for a lot of people, and talking for long blocks of time, whether it be on a subject or just on a tangent, isn't always the easiest thing to do. Whereas, on this podcast, it at least the feedback that I've gotten is that it does come quite naturally. And I tie that back to this, I guess, drill that I do multiple times a week. Is I will literally set a timer for 10 minutes, put it on my phone, and I'll sit at my desk and I'll talk to what it's right in front of my face right now is my big computer screen. It'll just be my computer screen with my logo on it, and I'll have a topic, whether it be a training topic, whether it be anything, the weather, the dogs, like anything, and I'll have a 10-minute timer, and I'll press start, and the goal is to talk uninterrupted with the least amount of filler words as possible until the timer goes off, with no spaces. It's incredibly hard to do.
I've done that drill, but with writing before.
Yeah, and I suck at writing, so I would be terrible at that. I probably should try it with writing because it might make me better at writing. But I feel like I'm fairly good at communicating, and I think it's because I fucking practice it every single week.
Mm.
It's amazing what you can speak about when you have to speak about it for 10 minutes nonstop.
And it's funny because there will be some people that are like, 10 minutes isn't that long. It's like when you literally have to speak on one topic continuously for 10 minutes, it takes so long.
it's a long time, dude, because say the topic is, how to improve overhead mobility. Okay, cool. I could explain that in 1 minute.
Mm.
Very concisely. Okay, let's look at this thing. Let's look at this thing. Let's look at this thing. This is how it's going to impact your ability to get your arm over your head. Like, that's not going to take that long. So it's then once, and I always start with going down the most concise route as possible. And then I look at the time and I'm like, dude, that was 45 seconds. Now I've got to fill 9 minutes and 15 seconds of just reiterating and elaborating on the concepts that were said in the first 45 seconds. And it's just a really nice process of doubling down on your thoughts and the way you think about things and then how you express that verbally.
Mm.
It's cool. It's cool. You should give it a try.
I'll give it a go.
It's fun. I find it fun, personally. But some people think I'm crazy, and they're definitely right. All right. Hit me with your recap of some of the fucking incredible things that we've seen over the last week or so in the powerlifting space.
All right. So I obviously think that we can't go past what we saw over the weekend with Colton. Weighed in at 110 kilos, totaled a whopping 1,120 kilos. Squatted 440, benched 245, pulled 435, 7 from 9.
Mm-hmm.
Missed a 450 squat, missed a 460 deadlift. Like, I don't think there is much to say other than, wow. I will be so fascinated to see what he does come November at Big Dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is probably the most impressive thing I've ever seen in powerlifting.
I would be curious to know if that's the heaviest 10 times body weight total ever.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have spoken about some very impressive things, and there's some very impressive things that have happened, throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I could put many things above that. That is just so unbelievably, outrageously impressive on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have spoken on this podcast and off air for months on end now around some of his training videos and the direction that things were heading, and the common theme of the conversations between you and I was, if he can stay healthy and if he can put some of this on the platform, it is going to be unbelievable. And
he did. And it was.
And he did, and it was. And I don't even think that unbelievable does it justice. It is mind-blowing to hear those numbers spoken and to think about what that actually fucking is in real life.
Because, I think the reality is as well, if you look at the numbers of, say, 440, 245, 435, you would very much go, that must be from, a 140 to, 170 kilo individual.
And if it was, it would still be very, very impressive.
It's impressive regardless of the size of the individual.
Yeah.
But to see that come from a guy that weighs 110 is fucking staggering.
Do you know the thing that makes it even more so impressive to me?
What's that?
His age.
Was he like 22, 23?
He's a junior.
Yeah, which is fucking wild.
So, you and I often muse about the idea around powerlifting being, or strength sports in general, being this sport in which time matters and consistency over time matters, and it takes time to build strength, and you have to do the work, and you have to build the capacity in these positions, and it's a long game, and play the long game, and you're going to see the results. You look at lifters throughout history in their prime, later on in life, because of the amount of time spent to get to that amount of strength to be able to express that on the platform. And then not only is this guy 110 kilos just lifting numbers that just seem fucking unbelievable to is probably the only way I could describe it. He's doing that as a junior, which to me is just even more unbelievable. You haven't been training for 10 years, for 15 years. This guy might have been training for 5 years. We don't know. Like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I think it's just like a real testament as well to like how hard he works. Like when you see him and he's repping 400 kilos at 110 on his squat and on his deadlifts and then some, like he's just a fucking workhorse.
There's a saying, built different.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of those situations where it's very much a case of, yeah, you're just built different.
Very much so. Like,
And what does that feel like? Is my that's where my brain goes with that as well. It's like, I know what 300 kilos feels like.
I don't think I would actually want to really know what it feels like to have nearly 1,000 pounds on your back or in your hands. I think that would just be gross.
It's inconceivable that that's just so impressive to me, man. We were talking before we recorded about the 75 kilo female 310 kilo squat. That's very impressive.
Yeah.
This is kind of up there with that in terms of level of impressiveness for me. Just with how heavy that is. And to know that there's probably more there as well. To know, like, I saw that numbers. I didn't see all of Colton's list, but I saw his bench, and I felt like that was really, really nice attempt selection. And I saw the deadlift, and I wasn't certain that it was his second attempt, but it looked like it moved like a second attempt for me, and I didn't see the failed third. But from all accounts, it was very much like a bee's dick away from being a successful lift on the third attempt as well.
Well, I mean, like he missed his third attempt squat at 450, which, I mean, like, fuck, like, it's 450, like, it's fucking heavy.
Yeah.
But his third attempt deadlift, it was literally, he was standing up, he was pretty much locked out, and it just like popped out of his hand.
Yeah, so
like, that's not a strength issue. An extra 25 kilos.
That's an extra 25 kilos, which is it's even more insane.
Like, between now and big dogs, I don't see it being unrealistic for him to be like scratching at that all-time world record total.
So one thing that has come out of this is it has made me extremely excited for big dogs.
Are you guys going to come down for it?
I will probably come down for it. Yeah, I'm not sure if Em will come down for it, but she might. I'm planning to come down for it, even if it's just for the day.
Yeah.
I'm getting quite fond of those day trips.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for a big day, but it's also like I can fly down. Like Em flew down to Melbourne just for the day for Pro Raw. I'm flying up to Brisbane next week just for the day for APL Nationals. And I like it in the sense that I can fly in, do what I need to do in that city, fly out late, be home. Yeah, I'm home late, but I wake up the next day, I'm straight back into routine.
Yeah,
which is nice. With everything that we have going on at the moment, and with the time just kind of being this asset that I'm desperately trying to claw back as much as I can of, because I feel like it is fleeting at best. Those day trips are really nice, so I do plan on coming down at least just for the day, because and I'll admit that up until this I wasn't overly excited for it. It's a cool concept, and I think there'll be some cool things on there. But like the names that were released didn't make me go like, "Whoa, this is insane!" Like it's a lot of lifters that I've seen lift at big meets here in Australia already. Anyway, with a few others sprinkled in. But this just literally just elevates it for me.
Do you know who I'm really hoping comes out for it?
Who?
Zahir.
Yeah, well, that would be, given his recent performance as well, would be incredible.
Like, he's obviously been speaking about going like 500, 300, 400 in the single comp. He went like on that exhibition meet that he did or whatever it was, where he scored a 500 at 125. Like, his bench training, I think he bench was like 280 for a double. And he was obviously pulling up around that 400 kilo mark as well. It's like there's very much potential for him to go and pull that off, which is wild.
Yeah, I'm excited for it now, especially given that, because that was just otherworldly. We talk about aliens building the pyramids. Like, he might very well be one of them. We should just ask him.
He'll probably bite our heads off, but I mean, we could ask.
Do you know the other? Do you know the other reason why the information? We don't have information about aliens, and we don't have proof.
Because it's a government conspiracy.
When you walk into a room and you forget why you went in there, or you like open the fridge and then you look there and you're like, what was I opening this fridge for? You like walk into your room and you're like, oh, I was coming in here for something, but I forget what it was. You know why I think that happens?
What is that?
You walk into the room, you see an alien, and they flash you with the Men in Black flash to erase your memory, so that they can disappear.
It makes sense.
And then you're like,
it makes sense.
Oh, I forget why I was here. I think that could be it.
I like it.
We're just out here getting flash rotted all the time.
Fuck yeah, let's go. I think the other performance that is very much noteworthy is old Derek.
Death grip.
Death grip Derek. Going 400 kilo squat in sleeves, a 245 bench, and a 415 deadlift for 1,060 total at 125. Only went 7 from 7. Didn't take third attempt squats or deadlifts. Very impressive.
Very impressive. He has such a beautiful squat.
Oh, it's outrageous.
I I'm hard pressed to name a squat, especially in sleeves, that I like better than his.
I don't think. I think he has one of the nicest sleeve squats I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah. Technically, visually, strength, like it's all there. It's like one of the, from a beautiful rating, it's
Mm-hmm.
so high up there on my scale. I just, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my god, that is so nice.
Yeah, the man can fucking move.
Mm. And
Mm.
he is jacked.
And juicy.
Mm. Very much so.
Mm.
Also, not very old.
No, he's like what, 24?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I
Very
think
nice.
like
Very. He's got a nice deadlift too. He's just. He's. I
he's
mean,
just a great lifter.
with those numbers, everything's good.
Mm. Like I think, like obviously, like on the back end of these two performances, I think like obviously we spoke a little bit about this off air before we started recording today, but if we think back to like 2020, before obviously the world shit itself, as part of like the big dogs and pro raw events, we were going to see warriors,
Mm.
which was the 115 kilo weight class. I think with obviously some of the performances we've seen this year, obviously, you know, we've got Colton going 1120 at 110. We've got Derek going, 1060 at 125. We've got Hack going 1043 and a half at 93.5 or whatever it was. It's just seeing some of these shocking feats of strength.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be awesome. Like, obviously, the hard thing, I think, for like a lot of the American and European lifters is obviously, getting to Australia is not a short flight. But if it was a sort of thing where they could be like, hey, look, we're going to run an exhibition meet and there's like some serious prize money up for grabs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it was like 50 grand back in like for big dog, the last big dogs they ran. It was like something like 50 grand as first place
Mm-hmm.
prize money they ran at the exhibition, but like it was fucking wild.
Yeah.
But I think if it was the kind of thing where if they got like Colton, Derek, Hack, fucking Zahir, and like Balkan together, it was like it's a 5v5 thing where it's like cool. Whether it's they went on total or dots or however they did it, I think it would be pretty fucking impressive to see those five go like head to head.
Yeah.
Like I reckon if Derek got back into wraps, I mean, Hack being Hack, I don't think he'll ever go into wraps, but if he learned how to use wraps and he'd go like, 400 kilo squat at 90,
Mm-hmm.
a 600 pound bench and a 900 plus deadlift, I think that'd be pretty fucking impressive. But I think seeing those five go like head to head, fucking wild.
Yeah, I like the idea of that 115 kilo weight.
Because that would have a few of the guys go up just a little bit and a few of the guys come down just a little bit.
It's a really nice middle ground in between that 110 and 125. And it really does open up a lot of possibilities for competition. Because you think, a lot of those 125 guys aren't gonna lose a whole lot by coming down to 115, and some of the 110 guys will probably gain a decent amount from jumping up to that 115 mark. Someone like Crozier, for example, shout out, friend of the show. I think Crozier at 115 is a dangerous prospect with that coming in at that, the body composition that he's known for at 115 is that's a scary prospect as well. With healthy knees and some training behind him, what could he do?
Well, I think back if you think of like the glory days of like the 110s here in Australia, like there's Crozier, Bass, like Deeks was on his way back up to that 110 class. Like, yeah, like I just wish that if we could go back 5 years in time and get like the OG, like, you know, Nathan Jones, like the OG 110s, and get them all together healthy at their prime. Oh,
and give him 5 extra kilos.
yeah, but like, guys, you can go up to like, I think Deeks would have struggled going up to like 115, but seeing Bass at 115, Will at 115, like those two going head to head at 115 would have been a fucking treat.
Bass's squat at 115 would be sexy.
Well, I mean, like, I think it was when he got up to like 120 or something like that. He was north of 400.
Mm-hmm.
And he was benching like 250. His deadlift was just always.
Speak about beautiful squats.
It's fine. You can have my autograph later.
Speak about beautiful squats. I would definitely put him in that bracket. I'm a big fan of Bass's squats.
He's also just a great lifter across the board.
Yeah, I like his squats though. I think his squats are very nice.
Yeah, agreed.
And technically very nice. Especially when it gets heavy. When it gets really heavy and it still looks the same as when it's really light, that's when I'm like, this gets me hard.
Knows how to squat.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that get me hard. Isometrics is one of them. And when your squat looks the same as when it's heavy and when it's light, that's the other one.
So them.
Yeah. There's 2 things on that list and they're them. I had one of the guys at the gym got a little bit of an injury this week. I followed up with him yesterday, and I said, "How's it feeling?" He said, it's a bit sore, but I've got a plan. I spoke to coach and spoke to physio, and we're going to roll with some isometrics today, and moving forward, progressing those until we can start to do a few other things pain-free or with acceptable pain limits. And then I kind of was like, what isometrics are you doing? Big isometric guy, they get me hard. And he wrote back, he's like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it's fair though.
Well, it is what it is. I'm a soulless isometric lover.
You'll start putting in all your posts being like, isometrics, handshake, Nic.
I could do that actually.
It's going to catch on, dude. It's going to catch on.
Big ISO guy. I might just sign off with that on every post.
Well, I mean, like your Insta handles, aka Big Nic, Big Isometric Guy, BIG, Big Nic.
I like that.
It's scary how well that works.
I like that. It's not even big. It's not even big in my stature anymore. It's just Big ISO guy.
Big isometric, yeah.
Oh,
get around it.
I'm using it.
Go for it. I won't even charge you royalties.
Yeah, you can try.
You'll just block my debits.
If you see any debits from tree huggers, block them. That's the message I'll send to my bank. They'll see Ben Mack and they'll be like, Ben Mack, this guy's a tree hugger. I've seen his Instagram. Block. I'm getting big tree energy.
Fuck yeah. Big ass trees.
I think you wrote that in one of your stories, didn't you?
I did. It was in the reel.
Yeah, you posted a reel and you're like full of big tree energy. I was like, I like that. I can see what he's done there.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can feel it.
Yeah,
I can sense it.
Yeah, you can.
Dude, out of those 2 powerlifting performances that we outlined, if you had to put them head to head, break that down for me.
In what way?
It's hard to do because there's a few differences, but Like, let's just go, like, pretend tomorrow they had to compete head to head at 115.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at in terms of, like, what's that playing field look like? How does that result turn out?
I still think Colton would come out on top. Again, how Derek would go in wraps, hard to say. Like, is this, again, if it's wraps versus sleeves, like,
Okay, yeah. Well, let's go. Both compete wraps or both compete sleeves.
well, I mean, again, I haven't seen Derek do anything in.
He hasn't done wraps for ages.
Yeah, so I'm just going to have a look at his Instagram.
One thing I will say on this topic, though, which I think could be something that we could speak on in a little bit more depth after I bring it up, is for a long time, for a decent amount of time, Derek's training was very much not training like a powerlifter.
Yep.
There was some strength-based movements in the program, and there was a lot of other stuff in the program that wasn't, quote unquote, powerlifting programming. You and I have spoken on this podcast before about how funny the Instagram persona is, and the fact that he will say, "Oh, I'm giving up powerlifting. I'm just training for strength now," and then to come back to powerlifting, competitive powerlifting, and put up a performance like that. I think it really highlights the benefits of not being hyper specific year round.
I'd agree. Like, I'm decently far back in the gram. I mean, like, I'm looking at I'm back in like 2022 and I still haven't seen anything in wraps.
No, he hasn't done wraps for ages. The last time he did wraps, he had long hair.
So,
like shoulder length.
Yeah, so looking at stuff from one of the comps he did in wraps, he squatted 903. So, like, what was that, like 412?
But that was years ago too.
Yeah, that was like early 2022, so like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's him still posting about his. Sorry, it was December 2021 where he did. What comp was it? Depth Before Dishonor sponsored it, but I think it may have been the American Pro. And he squatted 904. So, like 412, 415, somewhere around there, which is just wild. But fuck, like, if Derek had if let's say Derek came out for big dogs and he was going to do it in wraps and he had 6 months to get ready for wraps, I don't know. Like, I look at, so Chuck Derek in wraps, let's say he gets an extra 40 kilos. puts him on par with Colten, who just missed one slightly heavier. Their bench is on par, even though there's a 15 kilo difference in body weight. Colten still pulled 20 kilos more, whereas like Derek looked like he was about to drop that 415. Again, this is not me shit talking, but if it's looking at it purely from like an analytical perspective, Colten almost held on to 460 at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Derek almost lost 415 at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Colten would come out on top. Yeah,
it's a fun conversation to have.
It's a fun. I still think Colten.
How does it go? How does it go the other way if we go both in sleeves?
Well, I don't know what Colten's work like, what his sleeve squat's like.
Neither do I. But I mean, that kind of feeds into the conversation, right? Is like, how much are you getting out of the wraps? I know some people can get a fuckload of kilos out of those wraps. So if that's the case, does that bring the squat down enough to where that kind of mitigates the deadlift advantage?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at some of his stuff from September 2023. He squatted 300 for 7 bare knees.
That's so absurd.
He squatted 340 for 4 bare knees. Like, I don't think it would really be
a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so interesting to try and put that together because obviously it's really hard to do given the fact that it's two different scenarios. But that's kind of what I like about it as well is there's no real answer. So there's so many what ifs that it makes it a fun conversation.
Like, I think obviously when you look at Colten being at 110 and then Hack being at like low to mid 90s, their dots are pretty much on par. And the fact that
that's probably the most impressive thing to me out of all of the stats that come out of Colten's performance.
It's the number one dots for men all time.
The number one dots for men all time, jumping over John Hack's dots. To me, that it just feels so impressive, given how impressive John Hack is as a lifter. Well, I feel like that holds so much weight.
Well, does that put Colten as the new GOAT of this era?
Okay, so let's go down the GOAT conversation. I feel like in terms of when we're talking GOAT of any sport, to me, there's a consistency kind of leg that has to exist within that conversation. Is how many times have you performed to this level over how long?
Yeah.
When we're talking are you the best in the world right now, is a different conversation to are you the greatest of all time? Are you the best in the world right now? And having one performance that is potentially the greatest performance of all time.
Does that make you the greatest? Yeah.
Put you at the top of the sport right now in this and better than the best performance potentially that's ever been had. When you're talking about an athlete being the greatest athlete of all time in their sport, I truly believe that there has to be an aspect of how long have you done this for? How long have you been putting up performance after performance after performance that meet a certain standard of execution? And what does that look like in relation to everyone else? If we look at LeBron James, The reason I put him as the GOAT, and this is a conversation that will never be settled. People are going to say Jordan. People are going to say Kobe. People are going to say LeBron. People are going to say Magic. Whatever you think, Kobe's my favorite player. Jordan, I think, in his prime, beats everyone at everything. But when I'm talking about the greatest athlete of all time, the greatest of all time to play basketball, I say LeBron, because nobody's done it for 20 years like LeBron's done it for 20 years, and that holds weight for me. That longevity piece, that stringing together performances for that amount of time, that has to factor into the conversation. So if we factor that into the conversation, it's like, do I think that he's probably the best right now off the back of that performance? Yeah, I'd say he's definitely in that conversation for sure, no doubt.
Well, here are some fun stats for you really quickly. If we look at, so I've just done a little bit of an open powerlifting search. Colton has 15 comps listed on there, not including the one from the weekend, but if we include that, say 16, there's 15 first place, 1 disqualified.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at Hack, 29 competitions, 1 DQ, 3 seconds, 26 first place.
Hit me with the totals. How many over 1,000 kilo totals?
I'll have to pull it up again.
I think that would be interesting to factor in there, because you can win competitions. Winning competitions is obviously the goal, but you can win competitions with shit totals if there's no one else there. Not that I think that they're doing that, but
So John has 6,000 plus kilo totals.
That's impressive in itself.
Yeah. Colton has 2. Now 3.
Which is also impressive. See that, I guess.
Actually, no, sorry. One of those is a double entry, so 1.
So, okay, so
2 including the weekend.
So that to me, and this is a completely off the cuff discussion where there's zero pre-planning, but I'm going to look at, if I'm looking at placeholders in the GOAT conversation, there's going to be certain things that need to be touched. There's going to need to be a longevity piece, and there's going to need to be a repeatable performance piece, and there's going to need to be like a benchmark piece on like how many times have you crossed this threshold, right? And if we draw the comparison to other sports, I'm going to use like a championship or a grand final. Like, how many times have you as a player won it all? That's going to weigh into the conversation. Powerlifting being a little bit different in the sense, like I just mentioned, you can do some local level meets, some state level meets, even national level meets where, maybe the competition doesn't turn up or they have a bad day and you win, but it may not have been like a quote unquote elite level performance. So if I'm looking at this, like, I guess, championship equivalent within the powerlifting realm, I might hang that on 1,000 kilo totals in this conversation and say, like, if Jordan has 6 rings, how many 1,000 kilo plus totals are we looking at? And that might be that same comparison there where people say Jordan's the GOAT because he has 6 rings. Cool. Yeah. Well, like, Hack having 6 1,000 plus kilo totals to me speaks volumes in terms of repeatable performances and just like the sheer impressiveness of doing it over and over again.
I think the exciting thing is going to be, like, obviously, when we look at the age difference between the two as well, like Hack has more than twice the amount of competitions under his belt. like if we're looking at relative percentages of first place finishes, obviously like Colton has slightly higher, but he also has half the amount of comp. So I'm like, once Colton sort of gets up around that, mid 20 range mark, it'll be really interesting to see what his performances do over the next decade,
Yep.
or even over the next like 5 to 8 years. And whether he's able to maintain a level of performance and maintain, like, it'll be really interesting to go, cool, like, is this potentially going to be like an encouraging factor for Hack to go up in weight and potentially look at sitting at like 104 to 106 and compete as a 110? Or is it going to be the kind of thing where Colton is just going to keep chasing, pushing out that 110 mark? And then at what point does he look at maybe going up to like a 125 lifter? I think the really interesting thing over the next couple of years, if he can stay healthy, is like, how far can he push it?
That's the other part of the conversation is to perform at that level that many times. It requires a level of durability, which I also think has to factor in to the conversation if we're talking about all-time GOATs, because it's not easy on the body to produce those types of performances and to stay injury free enough to continually put yourself in a position to perform like that. And I think that's going to be a really interesting piece because, as you mentioned, the age gap here is significant. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the most impressive things about Colton's performance is how young he is. And that's a really exciting prospect when you think, this guy could have literally 10, 15, 20 years in this sport if he wants to just keep racking up numbers. And how long can he do that and stay injury free and stay durable enough to just keep doing that? And how far can the envelope get pushed? This is one of these questions where it's time can only tell.
I think something that would be really exciting to see is if, let's say, he did push his body weight up around that 120 mark, whether he could go 1200 at 120.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, and that's what's exciting about it. But that's also what I love so much about John Hack.
Well, and that's where like I'm going to be quite curious to see if this kind of like maybe like kicks a little bit of a spark under Hack's ass and gets him like going again.
He hasn't had a whole lot of, quote unquote competition for a while. He's just kind of been in his own air. So to have someone now who I feel like this really it does open up this conversation and this piece around, okay, there's now a challenger to this conversation where up until now it's just been like, well, yeah, that's John Hack. And that's just what John Hack does, and there's no one that does that. And now it's like, well, there is someone that does that, and it's this guy, and he's young, and he's light, and he's strong as fuck, and there's more in the tank. And as exciting as that is in itself, it's even more exciting to think about, okay, well, what does this do to this guy who's just almost been on cruise control for a little while in his own space? Where does this take him? That's fucking a wild concept as well. Like, does this just go like, oh, okay, cool, well, now I'll take it out of third gear?
It could, like, I mean, we could speculate all fucking day long as to like what's going to happen on that front. I'm going to like have a bit of a cop out answer here and just be like, I'm just excited to see what the rest of this year brings for powerlifting on a global scale, to see our, like, if we're looking at Colton, Derek, Hack, Zahir, I'm not quite sure what Belkin's doing at the moment, but like if he comes back into the picture as well, like those five that I mentioned earlier, I think there could be some really, really exciting things.
Yeah. I agree, man. I really do agree. I think that it's an exciting time. I think that those two performances specifically that we highlighted during this conversation really give me a level of excitement that I don't think that I've had for a little while around
Mm.
powerlifting. And I think that at perfect timing with big dogs coming up later this year, and I think like there's some stuff happening right now that I'm definitely keeping my eye on quite closely that really does excite me, and it's fucking wild to think about where this sport could go over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like really wild.
Mm.
There's things happening right now that, quite frankly, are just outrageous, and how far can that envelope get pushed is dude, and I feel like it's nowhere near hit its straps yet either.
It hasn't. But one thing I am going to be very curious for is what sort of spectacle they put on for big dogs this year.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Hopefully they go all out.
Like, I know they've got, I think it's the Arts Centre again,
Yep.
which is where they ran the first big dogs. And that's like a full blown, like, like a full blown stage. There's a full auditorium for people to sit in. It will be wild.
I'd like it to be a nice big event and really kind of
Mm.
paint powerlifting in Australia in a really positive light, and
Yeah.
hopefully bring a few more eyes to it, because as I just alluded to last sentence, I feel like it really hasn't hit its straps yet, in the sense that powerlifting at the moment is probably the most mainstream it's ever been. It's still very
Mhm.
much not mainstream, but the more coverage that it gets, the more eyes that it gets on it, the more young people that we get coming into the sport younger. That's on the back end of that is when we're going to see some even wilder results, because these are guys that have not necessarily grown up wanting to be a football player and turn to powerlifting because they couldn't do this on the field. They're looking at these powerlifters and they're like, I want to be a powerlifter. I'm going to train for strength from a young age and come through. And we saw that with CrossFit, right? We
Mhm.
saw that first kind of iteration of CrossFit come through, and you had the Rich Fronings that were just dominating CrossFit in the early years. And Jason Kalipa I was a huge Jason Kalipa fan. I was living in California at the time, and he was from California, and he was a bigger guy and he's just jacked. And I was like, I like this guy. He's cool. But these guys weren't CrossFitters. They were athletes that turned to CrossFit when CrossFit first kind of launched, and they're like, oh, I'm good at this because I'm an athlete. And then you
Mm.
get the next wave come through of guys that had been training like CrossFitters for longer. And now, if you look at CrossFit now, which I know you don't have a whole lot to do with it, but I have a little bit to do with it here and there with some of our clients, within Enzi on the nutrition side of things are CrossFit athletes. And when I'm looking into CrossFit just out of an interest piece for them, it's like we're seeing shit done in CrossFit now that has never been done, because these kids have been training to beat CrossFitters from when they're 12, 13, 14 years old. Now they're
Yeah.
coming into a competitive age group where they're strong enough to compete on the world stage, and they're just blitzing shit because
Mm.
their skill level is off the charts.
Yeah.
And if we know that strength sports are very skilled, we know that squatting and deadlifting and benching, there's a massive skill component to this along with the strength component. And it's like, if you're dialing in these skill components from 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, what can you do when you get to 25, 26, 30 years old with all of that practice?
A lot.
A lot. And that's what's fucking exciting.
Mm.
Think of the amount of reps that these kids could have by that age.
Makes me wish I'd started a whole lot fucking earlier.
Yeah, it's exciting for the sport though,
Mm.
right? And I really hope it continues to go in that direction, because because fuck yeah, I guess is really like the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
You know, you see that those memes where it's like guys will see this and just say hell yeah.
Fuck yeah.
It's like
I love
that.
those
Like,
memes.
look at that and we're like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, you got anything else for us, sir?
Nah, man, I think I've done my spiel for today.
Ditto. Let's leave it on that, and we'll be back next week for another episode of Bars Loaded.
Thanks for joining us, guys.